Good Saturday morning solo of the month. My name is Matthew, and I'll be the host today, but I hope I'm not the only person talking. Welcome to this group practice where we'll be focusing on the Taffanel, Andante Pastoral, and Scherzettino. And likely most people will be focusing on the first part of that, the Andante Pastoral. If you are wanting to start practice of the next movement, you are welcome to ask questions or share out from that part as well. And I'd like to take a moment and say thank you to our friends at Flute World who are offering support to this group, including that 10% discount on sheet music and accessories. So if you are making any purchases of sheet music or accessories from Flute World, don't forget to type in that code Allison 2025 as we've entered a new year for 10% off sheet music and accessories. So thank you, Flute World, for that. Once again, we'll be focusing on the Andante Pastoral. So we'll start with just a little bit of warming up together. And the opening of this and much of it is really focused around G minor scales. So as a teacher and as somebody who practices flute a lot, I like to do the majority of my practicing away from the music. I want to arrive at the music and already feel confident that I can do the technical part of it, the tone part, the intonation part, all of the parts. So that way when I come to the music, I get to play. So mindset shift from practice to play is kind of how I approach a lot of music. So let's start with just the first 5 notes of the G minor scale. This was an image of this was posted before. We'll just do a little group warm-up together in the 5-note scale pattern. That way no one's afraid to play right now, right? So let's try it together. 1 and 2 and ready. And of course, it's great to practice articulation as well. Let's do the same thing in the upper register, just those first 5 notes. And the only difference is going to be the fingering for the high D is the left hand fingering, or thumb 2, 3. Ready. Awesome. Let's do another group of notes, B flat, C, D, E flat, F. And can anybody quick type into the chat, what is that the 5-note scale pattern of? Or unmute yourself and shout it out loud. B flat major, exactly. All right, B flat major, 5-note scale pattern. Ready. Awesome. Now let's go back to G minor and do a little bit of reverse. G, F, E flat, D. Just going to the D, so the top notes of that. And we're going to stay with natural minor. So this is keeping it in the key signature. G, F, E flat, D, E flat, F, G. And the same thing down low. The only difference will be the first finger stays down on that low D. All right, so we've played a few notes together. And before we get too deep into this, I want to ask you all, how did it feel to play a couple of notes like that, just nice and slow? Does everyone feel relaxed? Calm? At ease? Do you understand these notes? Are there any notes that felt scary or uncomfortable or stressful? Everyone looks pretty satisfied right now, which is what my intent is. Well, now that you know those notes, let's take a glance over at the first, several lines of the Taffanel. Are there any notes there that you didn't just warm up with that sense of calm and peace? None at all, right? Not really. So all of those 32nd note runs and 64th note runs, you just practiced those. So hopefully when you come to the Taffanel, it will be a lot less stressful. And that's one of the things I also want to talk about with this opening of the piece. Pastoral, let's go ahead and take moments to unmute yourselves. What does this opening, either the term andante or the term pastoral or the music itself, what is this evoking within you, within your deeper musician? What are some thoughts, some feelings around that?
Well, I always think of the Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony when I see the word pastoral, whether it's in music or not. And that's set in nature and very calming. And it's a place I want to be at a tempo of life that I want to be at with my heart rate relaxed.
Great. Don't be shy. Go ahead and unmute yourself and share out.
I think Daniel covered it.
My favorite
Sure.
words on this section are poco più lento, a little
A
slow.
little slow,
I'm
sure.
practicing at about 24 beats per minute right now.
That's a great place to start. As long as we're starting with that feeling of pastoral or that feeling of ease and gentleness. So many pastorals, are there other people who'd like to share out before I again just start rambling? Pastoral, I often like to think or invite my students to evoke within themselves the imagery of a shepherd sitting on a hill, tall grass, leaning against a tree, maybe playing a panpipe, and that's kind of what this opening section, that improvisatory section, is really kind of creating the imagery of, is just just moving up and down the panpipe while just gently resting. So if we approach this section with stress and tension, then chances are we're going to hear that or we're going to project that to the audience. And that's the last thing that we want to encourage an audience to feel is more stress or more tension. So we feel good about the G minor, we feel good about the B flat major, we feel good about that little technical stuff that we just did. Awesome. Of course, other things that we practice here would be long tones, always. Arpeggios and slow arpeggios are really useful for this. If we take the opening line, measure 5, and we remove all of the ornamentation, all of those 64th notes, we've got that G minor arpeggio. And so just thinking about the structure of this and reducing the amount of ornamentation or decoration around it, we have quite a simple line. And as long as we can hear and focus on that, it also gives us targets or landmarks. So if you missed a note or played a wrong note in the 64th notes, but you still arrive in time at the next target note, chances are the audience is going to be satisfied with that. But since you've already warmed up your G minor scales, you're much more likely to play the notes right. Another thing I'd like to talk about in warming up about this is I think something that'd be really useful to practice is harmonics. And I've been hearing a lot of people, or reading a lot of people on Flute Forum and those other groups saying how harmonics are like the number one tone exercise that they do. And I don't disagree by any means. And that harmonics are the way that we can fix just about anything, which it kind of is, as long as we're actually practicing them. So when I see a lot of people pick up their flute and do harmonics, they just kind of muscle through it quickly, and don't really think about what's going on. So I'm going to invite us together to try a few harmonics, but I like for you to try to challenge yourself to do a little bit less face movement and feel the harmonics happening within the mouth, within the soft palate lifting a little bit. Feel the openness of the throat and the gentleness of continuous support starting down low. So we'll be playing, let's start by playing the low G fingering, and hold the low G for a second. Yeah, and just for now, we'll have more time to share out. But for now, can everyone check and just mute yourself? And you don't need to listen to me by any means, but it just will make this opening a little bit more
Matthew,
understandable for everyone. Yes, Daniel?
when you say harmonics can fix everything, I don't know whether you want to deal with it now. And you said, people muscle through them and don't really pay attention. Can you address what it is they fix and what we're supposed to be paying attention to at some point in this exercise?
Yeah, and hopefully as we start to do it while keeping the face a little bit more loose, I hope that you're going to just like have that aha, like, oh yeah, this is what I'm focusing on in these. But yes, I'll be happy to talk about that more. So fingering the low G, let's just hold the low G. Feel the relaxed face, the openness of the throat. And remember, what you practice is what you pattern or what you learn. And that includes mindset and tension in the body. So if your shoulders are feeling tense at all, give them a little bit of a wiggle. Let's just hold that low G again. Let's move from that low G to the octave. And again, let's avoid moving the face as much as possible. So if you're used to moving your face a lot for octave slurs, don't beat yourself up. Just see if you can do a little bit less today, maybe shaving off a tiny bit of effort. As slow or as fast as makes sense for you to feel the air column adjusting here. And we're not tightening the throat. We're just, the real movement is happening with a gentle and subtle movement of the soft palate. It's changing the air direction. Some micro movement of the lips, but from the source, from your core, all the way out, just feeling that air column easy. The jaw isn't doing any extra movement. The lips aren't doing too much work. And the reason I suggest this is because then we can leave our lips to be more used for dynamics and intonation. So if we can train ourselves to think of the intervals as happening a little bit more internally, then these things that we can see and control with a little bit more consciousness, we can use for the things that tend to be a bit harder for a lot of people. Decrescendos without going flat, for example, right? Still fingering that G, let's add the fifth. Again, trying to feel little to no movement in the face. Throat extra open, shoulders relaxed. And then you can start to arpeggiate or move back and forth there would be a better way of describing it. So we have the octave and the fifth in that most recent thing. Let's start with the root and then go back and forth between the octave and the fifth. In the first set, my lips did move to get to the fifth, but then I just left my lips where they were and I was able to keep my mouth more steady then. So I'm kind of rediscovering where my embouchure is going to be most beneficial across my ranges. We can also, with that same fingering, go from the root to the fifth. And skipping the octave and just going back and forth. I know the last time I came down with the fifth because of habit, but just exploring the sense of moving the airstream around internally to navigate those intervals. So how does that feel? Does that feel like what you've been doing, or does that feel different than what you normally do when you practice harmonics? And then
Completely different
veterans
for
like
me.
Sean and Nick, I'd love to hear too what your thoughts are on this after people comment out. Yeah, I think I heard someone commenting.
That was me. It's completely different from how I've been practicing harmonics, and it's really great.
Good. And what feels great
It's
about
it's going to be a big adjustment to make that my default, but yeah, I'm madly making notes.
it? Great. Thanks, Carolyn. Anyone else noticing it's similar or different, and if so, how? David, I think you've got your hand raised. Maybe not. All right, and then Nick, you are a professional orchestral player. How do you approach harmonics when you're using them?
I really try and actually just think about it in terms of how string players produce harmonics, and that you're still using basically the fundamental. You're just a little bit higher up, so it's still got the core of the the bottom half of the sound in it, right? But it's just a change in the timbre of the instrument and how it's sounding. So it's got like almost, I kind of think of them, and I know this is a different type of extended technique, but I also kind of think of them in my mind as ghost notes, in that they don't have that full body core sound to them, but there's that sort of ethereal tone quality that you get when you are playing harmonics.
Great, thank you. Any other thoughts around what we've covered so far with the harmonics? There's one more harmonic exercise I want to do before we get into the music a little bit more. And what Nick said also kind of reminds me, I think it was Thomas Neifinger, actually kind of the opposite, but keeping the fundamental through. I think it was Tom Neifinger who first wrote down or was known for teaching drawn octaves or octave smears, and I taught that in a lesson this week, or 2 lessons, I think. Where the notes that don't change fingers, which would be like E through C sharp for the octave, trying to stop halfway between the octave to have more fullness and stretch between them. So that's kind of another way of feeling the change happening internally. So let's do one more fingering. We're going to finger low D. So of course, when you're doing your harmonics, it's great to do all that you can. But for sake of time today, let's finger the low D. So first finger down. And again, find that root, that fullness of the foundation. And from there, let's go back and forth between the octave. Leaving the first finger down. Feeling the airstream, just gentle waves. So our intervals don't have to invite or excite tension or fear in us. Let's add the fifth. Going as slow as makes sense for you today. Since the fifth is in our ear, that A, let's go back and forth between the root, the low D, and that fifth. Chart. And let's add the second octave, which will be a D. Easy breezy. Let's play around from the low D fingering, the high D. Let's go between the D and the second octave and the fifth, which will be the D and the A. Let's try the second octave, the D, and the first octave, D. And then that second octave and the root. And yeah, sometimes we miss, and then we try again, and we try again and again, right? And we don't beat ourselves up with it. So before I ramble some more, how did it feel with that low D and adding into that second octave, D? Still open, still free? So some of the points of this is that the open sensation, some of the points of this is controlling the airstream for the intervals. When we look at the music, now going to the second part where the Andante Pastoral starts, the very first large interval that we have in the pickup is the D to the A. That low D harmonic, when we went from the octave to the fifth, is that interval, right? So you practiced that already. And that's a place where there's oftentimes an intonation. The D, if we are too excited, we might be sharp on the D and then flat on the A. Most of the time I'm hearing this interval is a little too small. So thinking of the A as being nice and lifted and the D as being nice and rooted. Root and lift is what we find in those harmonics. So hopefully that interval right off the bat will have even better pitch. Measure 19, the end of measure 19, we go from a D to the D here. You just practice that with your harmonics. And then in measure 20, we go from the middle D to the low D. You just practice that with your harmonics. So you've practiced the technical aspects of this with some of that G minor warm-up, and now you've practiced some very applicable tone warm-ups to this as well. Finding finesse with your airstream to help you move through intervals with a sense of ease and relaxation. Anybody want to share just some thoughts right now from that warm-up? All right, and then the other thing that I just want to talk about with a pastoral, calm, right? Easy, simple. And that starts with the breath. So before we have people individually sharing out, let's everybody take a moment and put your hand on your stomach or abdominal area and blow out your air. Squeeze your belly button in. Yawn and feel the abdomen expand out. Exhale, squeeze in. This time as you exhale, begin to lengthen the duration of your exhale. Let's inhale 3. Exhale 4. In 3. Out 5. In 3. Out 6. Three. Sustain your exhale. So music teachers love to talk about taking deeper breaths. And yes, we do need to take deep breaths. But we oftentimes forget about blowing out the air and how we do so. When we take quick inhales, we stimulate the vagus nerves, which makes us anxious. When we take slower breaths and breathe deeper, we oftentimes have a sense of calm and ease, which is exactly what we want to start this. So let's get into some playing. Would anybody care to share out the opening section, measures 5 through 11? Or would anybody be willing to? I think somebody typed into the chat that they're willing to play. Yes, Carolyn typed in. Just so I could be prepared after Carolyn, can anybody who is willing to play the first 11 bars click on the react button? Any of the reactions is fine, just so I see it pop up on the screen that someone's going to play. And then anybody willing to play measures 12 and beyond, going beyond the opening few section until where the pastoral section really begins. Okay, and it's a little too fast for me to see it. So will you, those of you who will be willing to play, will you actually type in the chat? That'll be easiest for me to find. All right, and now with no further ado, Carolyn, let's hear you start this calm, beautiful opening of the pastoral.
So I am not going to go all 11 measures. I hardly ever perform in front of people. And I'm just going to do a little prep with the arpeggio.
And Carolyn, can you check that your original sound for musicians is on? We're not hearing you right now. And if you, the option should be in the top, kind of almost at the edge of the meeting. It won't look like it's in the meeting. It'll look like it's on that banner or the bar that goes across the meeting usually.
Okay, I think my bar. Okay, let's see. Audio setting.
And if you don't see it, then you'll need to go back to the main Zoom settings outside of the meeting and find it there. While Carolyn's looking, can somebody else maybe give us a little start? And then Carolyn, we won't forget about you. Yes, Daniel?
I just want to add something that something you've talked about before and that I watched at a class that I went to this week, which is that we do the breathing exercises, then we go to play, and it's so easy to forget what we just had in the breathing exercise because we go, oh, now I'm playing, it's a different mode. And that intermediate step that you have shown me, and I know some others, of bringing your flute away from the embouchure plate and bringing the blowing and free breathing to the flute with it there, and then doing that for me really works to keep me in that relaxed space. So just wanted to add that as a really great tip that you've shown us.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. And yes, it does seem that once people bring their flute to their face, everything changes. And so I've worked with people with different types of focal dystonia or tensions. And so sometimes I just like literally have them touch their flute to their face while they're doing other things so they become less afraid of it. But what Daniel's talking about is like bringing the flute to your face on the chin so you have that tactile response. And once we have that, your brain is probably automatically going to take you back into the most established habits. So when you're changing a habit, and if that habit that you're changing is the ease of your breathing, it's great to start to stimulate some of those I guess triggers to feel, but then be conscious of what you're doing. So and doing it with long tones is great too, etc. So the other thing I've noticed with everybody, including myself, is when, for example, we play long tones, we try to get through them as quickly as possible. Anybody else guilty of that? Like my long tones are actually medium tones, I guess. So what you practice is what you learn, and if what you want to learn is to feel at ease and comfortable and tension-free and pain-free in your playing, it's going to start with those long tones. All right, so Carolyn, did we find that setting? And if not, great, she found it. So let's go ahead and unmute you now, Carolyn, and give it a try again.
Yep.
And I'm so sorry, Carolyn, but once you enable it in the main settings, then you have to come back to the meeting and turn it on. And if you don't see it as an option of turning on and off, you might have to leave and rejoin the meeting. I know it's such a
Got it.
pain, but
Got it.
good. All right.
Yeah.
Wonderful, and thank you for being brave in that way, Carolyn. To be honest, I don't think most of us heard you very well. The volume of the flute was still quite low, but we can still talk. What are some things that you felt and noticed in that playing, and especially in comparison to how you may have felt playing it yesterday or the day before? Yeah, so there you go.
Were you asking me
Yes.
or the
What did
group?
you feel when you were doing it?
Well, a lot of nerves, but one of the things that has been really wonderful about even tackling these first 11 measures, because this is a very advanced piece for me,
Hmm.
is that just by sticking with it and slow practice and just working on short pieces at a time, I've been able to, I mean, I can play through those first 11 measures when I'm by myself, and it can go pretty smoothly. And that is a world of difference from when I started on this with the rest of you all and couldn't make heads or tails of it. And your markup with the counts, and then the tip to go 1, 2, 3. I have those beats actually, those emphases actually marked out, on a score that's just the 11 measures.
Great, great. So
So,
progress is all we want to find. Progress
yeah,
and connection. And those are
yeah.
great achievements. So bravo, Carolyn. And
Thank
thank you
you.
for being brave and playing out today. Can we get somebody else to
Well,
play the
yeah,
opening chunk?
I've always found it helpful when other people take that first step. So I
This is
thought
a
I'd do it.
safe space, and like the water's
Yeah.
great. Jump on in, the water's great, right? I think I heard somebody else say that they would play. Yes, I think Rachel, go ahead.
I'm not fully awake this morning, but I'll give it a shot.
All right, and Rachel, I hate to stop you, but also, can you double check your original sound for musicians is clicked
Uh,
on?
so I'm on an iPhone and I don't see it in the same place you're describing.
Mm. And I am not an Apple user, so I have no idea how to troubleshoot that for you or with you.
It
Um,
is in the Apple iPhone version. It's just in a little different place. Let me see if I can find it.
Sean, is it in the toolbar on the bottom?
Good
and
question.
while
I
we're
haven't used it in a
looking,
while.
and maybe once it's found, if somebody can just maybe share a screenshot in the chat, even that would be great. While we're looking for that to help Rachel out, does anybody have the original sound for musicians and be willing to play the opening? And if not, are there any specific questions to these opening 11?
I can jump in if you want, if nobody has questions.
Sure. And Nick, I'd love to hear you play that. But Mindy, were you about to volunteer?
I was, but I'm really nervous.
Let's
Um,
have
Sure.
let's have Mindy go
okay,
first
so here
because
we go. I'm a chicken.
Nikki is a professional performer.
Yeah, then it would
I
be
would be
really
nervous
hard.
playing after Nick too.
I think the thing that I'm noticing that I'm doing wrong, or is wrong a bad word, is I keep forgetting to tongue the core note, the beat note. So when I come down, like tonguing the D and tonguing the B. So that's something that I practiced wrong, and so I have to unpractice. But
Okay, and since you brought up the word wrong, I don't want to remove that from your vocabulary, but I think a more interesting word for growth and potential would be like opportunity, right? There's opportunity for you to explore that articulation a little bit more. With that in mind, though, before you stress about it too much, does it sound bad when you don't tongue it to you? No. There are a lot of times I will learn a piece of music exactly as it's on a piece of paper. Most of my performing career when I used to perform was new music, living composers, and I had to play exactly what was on the page. And when I'm playing this romantic stuff and I'm like, I learn it exact, I'm like, no, I'm gonna have some fun with it, you know. So don't beat yourself up over it. But if you do remember to tongue those notes, great.
no,
You're welcome to keep going. All right, thank
breathing.
you so much, Mindy Lou, for that. Can you? Is your original sound for musicians colon on? Does it say on in the
It's a
means of?
green thing with a check mark in it.
But next to that, does it say original sound for musicians? The words.
There's no words. It just says Zoom.
Okay.
Did you hear
Um,
it?
it cut in and out. I could hear portions of it. So let's start with how did that feel when you were playing it right now?
I felt like I forgot to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
But I sounded rich in my room where I am.
So you liked your tone, and there's still opportunity for you to focus on how and where you're going to breathe. Is it the where or the how or just actually doing it that caught you?
It's the where, and I didn't. So I put all my markings in the my pianist app, but I didn't do it on my paper. So remembering to, yeah.
Yeah, it's great to have those visual cues in our music. They do make the mind so much more comfortable to reach those milestones. So you know where you want to breathe. You just haven't drawn that map onto this particular printout that you have. Great. And when you have the breaths and the breath mapped out like that, do you notice any difference in the way that you breathe or the confidence around the breath itself?
I feel like it's fuller, and I can prepare for it.
So would you recommend to the general person that they draw the breath marks in their music as a visual map?
I do recommend that.
Awesome. Great. And then Nick, would you were saying that you would also demonstrate a little bit of this opening?
Sure.
Bravo, and thank you. So Nick, can you tell us a few things that you feel and felt about that?
Yeah, so in sort of tagging on from the warm-up and everything we were talking about with G minor, I really try and think about tone color. This is, I think, a running theme with all the French pieces in this French book or any of the French pieces that we have in our repertoire that we're so lucky to have. But especially on this first line, I'm thinking about how can I shade each of these main notes of G minor maybe differently. So the other thing to sort of bring up too is to go back to the word pastoral a little bit. We're actually playing Beethoven 6 this week at work. So very handy that it comes in this conversation today too. And the thing I think also that we have to keep in mind is warmth in the sound. Right? We don't necessarily want to get out of that warm color that the flute can so naturally create. So I'm thinking about in terms of warmth, maybe darkness or shading of color here. So in terms of G minor, right, we've got our bass note or our root, the G. And I want that to just be really nice and easy, nice and warm. But then as I'm descending, how did these other parts of G minor fit into that in terms of like a warmth, like color palette, right? So the D might be a little bit less. It's also, if you think about it in a triad, it's the fifth. So it's kind of like the less important one. So I may do that a little bit less and have a little bit of a decrescendo maybe even though it's not marked. But then we've got this B flat, right? That's the most important part of G minor, because if it was a natural, then we would be in major. And how weird would that sound? Right? That changes the whole opening if you just change that one accidental. So by really thinking about the meaning of minor and that the B flat is so central to that, I want to actually go in my phrasing towards the B flat here. Right? It's also the halfway point of the measure. So thinking about direction in terms of phrasing, even in just this opening line of just flourishes in G minor, there's different ways to shade that on the way down. and then we're really truly home on that low G, right? We're getting lower and lower into the bottom half of the instrument, as we were talking about with harmonics. That's your fundamental part of the instrument. Like, that's where you're going to get the most core, the most bang for your buck in terms of sound. So now we're dark from the B flat on, I think. Even lower. And then we can sort of lighten up as we go up. So it's incorporating a lot of color into the phrase, as well as making sure that the counting and everything is there. But thinking about the structure, for me at least in this, is really helpful to give myself those other points of thought in process.
Nick, do you mark your harmonic structure for you, or is it intuitive for you knowing about it?
It's intuitive for me with all of the training that I've had throughout the years, but I do mark in key areas, and if I've come back to a piece after years of not working on it, like this piece, which is beautiful, there's always moments for rediscovery of things too. So I might have missed something, or as I'm playing through something, or if I'm looking at the piano score, I might say, oh, I missed that before, and I'll mark that in. But in terms of color and things like I was talking about before, I do have like a color system that I actually have a whole set of colored pencils, and I do mark certain colors in my music so that I also get that visual cue. And I do those like very lightly, but above the main notes of what I'm trying to go for in terms of color shading.
Great, thank you, Nick. And from hearing that, are there any other responses to Nick's playing, or to Mindy Lou's playing, or any of the other demonstrations that we had? Would anybody else like to play or have more discussion around this opening section? All right, so we seem to, oh, I think I heard an unmute. Maybe not. If we seem satisfied with that opening section, let's look on a little bit further, starting in pick up to measure 13, in this actual Andante Pastoral section. So the previous section was really much more of a prelude, or just something to kind of set the scene. And here with the pick up to measure 13 is where the real melody, melodic material starts coming in for the flute. So is anybody excited to play this? Can you hit the react button so I can see and it stay on the screen a little bit? Even if you're not excited, is anybody willing to play this? Go ahead and hit that react button. Any other reactions would be cool. All right. The only person I see is Rachel. Am I missing any? Come on, I need to twist some arms here and get more playing. So let's talk a little bit about this. And actually, Rachel, we'll just go ahead and have you start before I ramble on, because maybe I won't have to overthink things. So Rachel, starting in this next section.
I'm not sure if I got my settings changed. I had to leave the meeting and go into the Zoom settings to find that. So I don't know if that's an iPhone thing. Anyway, you want me to start at the Andante?
Let's just play a couple notes to make sure that we can hear you. Yeah. So now that you've returned to the meeting, once you enable it in your settings, you still then have to turn it back on in the meeting itself. And if you're not seeing it as an option, you might have to actually X out of the meeting and then rejoin the meeting.
For iPhone, you go to the bottom of the screen, all the way over where it says more, and there's 3 dots.
Mm-hmm.
Hit the more, and then it should come up as an option to enable original sound.
Okay. That was not there before I changed it outside.
But it's there now?
Yeah, it's there now. Let me see.
All right, who else is on an iPhone? Go ahead and hit that. Go to that more button now. Let's all do it together if you're on an iPhone. Hit that more button and click on the original sound for musicians, because then we can have a lot of people playing, and that'll be so much more fun than just listening to Matthew talk. All right, and now Rachel, with no further ado.
Am I unmuted? Okay. See, I start that forte when it's supposed to be piano. So immediately I'm like, oh, calm down. All right. I don't know how far you want me to go. Keep going? Okay. Oh, where the heck was I? I have lost my place in the music. Oh, here we go. Keep going.
We can pause there. Great. All right. So, Rachel, the first thing I want to ask, and this is the hardest thing, what were things about your playing that you liked just now?
I think the tone is nice. My phrasing is I'm still not sure where to breathe sometimes. And also I have an issue with those well, it's not a whole octave jump, but the intervals where you're going from D to E flat, C to D. I have a tendency, not always, but sometimes I will crack on those large jumps.
Yeah, great observation. So already going into where some of the opportunity lies. And so the harmonic practice that we did should help you feel more confident with those intervals over time. Again, nothing is fixed in one session. Nothing is fixed in one day. This is why we practice every day, right? Hey, buddy, thanks. I think we're okay. But, sorry, I got a very little 100-pound dog right next to me who's excited about people getting out. It's been snowy here, so people are finally out on the streets again. Let's just take those intervals. We'll just stick with the first one, the D, E flat. And just feel the interval itself. Do you notice in your body there's sometimes a tendency, and I'm going to exaggerate, but I'm noticing very subtly in you. Your right hand is lifting and your chin is lifting sometimes for the higher note and then lowering on the lower note. And then we could also do tongueless or breath attacks for that interval, and that can establish the awareness of what the embouchure is doing.
That's immediately different.
Immediately different. And the first one did crack a little bit, but then the second one, your top lip focused the air down a little bit more for the E flat. You weren't consciously thinking, I mean, as a teacher, I could sit here and be like, you need to use the top left corner of your lip a little bit more and the air to your flute. But like, then you're like fussing with your face the whole time. So this is discovery is such a great way of learning. So what did you notice is different about your face when you were doing the breath attacks just then?
My embouchure felt more open and my top lip felt it a little more lifted or something. It's hard to explain.
All right, so let's try it in the context of the rhythm now. So when you did this before, a little bit of opportunity rhythmically here, the dotted eighth notes are a little bit longer. Ta, 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 or 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. So while we're exploring these intervals, go ahead and put the rhythm in. Yep, go for it. So then the eighth note C will get 2 16th notes, and the eighth note D. So we're subdividing at the 16th note level, but when we're in 12/8, we'd count it like 1, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. 5, right, so 5 is the D. Yeah, much better rhythm on those. Good. Let's do it. So we're kind of keeping the air now. Do it with a breath pulse. Sorry, E flat. All right, and I know it's so compound for us to work on both the interval and the changes of your airstream and doing less physical movements externally and rhythm. So you did 2 things and 1 double bonus. Awesome. Great job there. So going back to how it's feeling. So now that the rhythm is great, going back to how it's feeling in the mouth, in the throat, in the lips. Let's check those notes. Sounding much more resonant in the lower register, like that E flat and the D sounded more full. How does it feel to you?
Feels much better.
Feels much better. So were you overworking yourself a little bit before?
Yeah, I'm trying to do everything with my lips and my face when I need to just relax. Tension is a big issue for me, so yeah.
Tension is a big issue for all of us, right? And tension is probably the thing that inhibits us the most. I'm not saying that we aren't using muscles. We are athletic musicians. You know, we are doing a whole lot with our body. But sometimes habit or fear or trauma from when we were in 6th grade band and got yelled at or whatever, like that stuff does stick into our physical body. So it's just good to be aware. When you moved your body less and then when you were allowing the top lip to do what it needs to do, it came across so nicely. That exercise that we did is just a quick manipulation of the moist de la sonorite growing intervals. Etc. Like all of his variations around that. Yeah, it'd be cool if we did every single interval on the flute every single day, but who's got time for that? I don't.
I'm like, what page? What page is that on?
Oh gosh, I don't know. You know, honestly, I bought the book when I was in high school, and just it all made so much sense just to do what I needed to do. I don't look at it very often. I feel like it's the 3rd exercise. So after all of those long tone looking things, and he mentions there like playing as short as possible without his tongue while using vibrato, and I find that to be really interesting dialogue too. So it's just great to warm that up so when you come to your music, you get to be free and easy with it. Rachel, would you like to play that opening section again or do a different part?
I can try it again.
Yeah, and let's just, so on this actually, let's do a, what's it called when you go refer back to something talked about earlier? There's a term for that. Daniel talked about playing without the flute or playing off the face. Because we have tendencies to follow the topography or the shape of the music, let's just for a second listen to your air. And hearing the air column as being consistent rather than also getting softer or stronger or dipping and rising with the shape of the music itself. Call back, maybe? That might be what's called.
Reprise.
A reprise. All of these things. Awesome. So
Hey, I just want to add that the guy whose masterclass I went to this week goes even further with that listening to the air, and he suggests doing like simple scales like the Taffanel and Gobert 1 or the Reichert 1, where you do a line and then a line playing, and he'll do the whole, that's his first exercise that he suggests, is alternating between blowing and playing, so that you really keep that non-tension with your air. It was interesting.
All right, so Rachel, we'll listen to you. Everyone can try this at home. But Rachel, pick up to measure 13, play those first few phrases, but don't play it. So air it, finger it, imagine you're playing it, but listen for the sound of the air. And we'll all hear your air unless we're doing this at home too.
The first thing I notice is that I can hold a longer phrase because I'm not blowing my whole lungs out trying to compensate.
So let's hear that phrase now. We can go back and forth and do on and off.
Normally I have to take little fish breaths through there, so that's already better.
Already feeling progress, great.
Yeah. Yeah, I still want to fudge those rhythms there, so I'm gonna have to really work with that. I think I might have written it in wrong, because I wrote all the little counting in there.
Yeah, great. And because rhythm can get us stuck, we'll talk about that more in just a second. But Rachel, so feeling the air column more consistent, how does your phrase sound to you?
More open.
More open.
A
How
little
does
more
it sound to people listening?
Smoother.
Smoother, more continuous, more connected. Yeah, there's less like falling into ruts and stuff like that, and that's so easy for us to do. And then we tend to have too little support on the low notes. So this is a really, really great mind-opening thing that we sometimes do. And yes, counting is something that is great to do, and it's so good to practice our counting away from the music too. Even taking this music that starts on beat 7, 7, a 9, 1, a 5, a 6, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a 6, a 7, E and a 9, E and a 1, E and a 4, and 9 and 1, and 3, 4, and 6, and 8, and 9, and 1, and 2, 6, 8, 9, 1, a 2, a 3, 4, a 5, a 6, 7, 8, and 9, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 5, 8, triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 5, right? We don't have to make it harder than it is, right? We can count to 9, and then we subdivide the things that look like 16th notes. We say 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and then you can break it down even further than that. But also when you're just thinking the big beats, ta, 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 ga, da, 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 dee, da, da, in that measure type of a thing. So yes, rhythm is great. Metronomes are such good friends, and it's so nice to practice the rhythm away from the music, because when you're combining learning rhythm and learning notes and learning dynamics and learning intonation and learning all of those things, it can be a lot for the mind to handle at one time. So if you notice that not all of the things are happening at once, ask yourself, what is the weakest length? What is the weakest part of my playing right now? Or where do I have the most opportunity? And isolate that. If it's rhythm, isolate the rhythm, practice that by itself, and then you get to enjoy the music so much more when you come back. Other thoughts about that? We're running short on time. Would anybody else like to play any part of this? Demonstrate anything at all? Any other just general questions, thoughts, or comments that you would like to share out?
I have a big
So
with that couple of measures that has a ton of accidentals in it. I don't know if anyone else is struggling with that.
Are you talking about like measure 34, 5, 6, 7 area?
Yeah. I have it marked out as 25 and 26, I think.
25 and 26, yes. So again, when we have something where we are feeling slow and sluggish, isolate that. So translating the smudges of ink on your paper into something meaningful in your mind is a multi-step process. We don't think about it too much, but there, A, C sharp A, E flat, D flat C, G flat, A flat, E flat, F flat, G flat, A flat. Start by saying the notes, literally saying the notes. I know that our instinct is to pick up our flute and play because that's what practice is. But if it's not productive, if you're not playing the right notes, that's not productive practice, right? So start by saying the notes. Let's all say those notes. So let's do measure 25 and just 25. I'm going to stop on the downbeat of 26. All of us saying the notes. A, C sharp A, E flat, D flat C, G flat, A flat, E flat, F flat, G flat, A flat. And if you can't say those notes in time, chances are the brain or the mind isn't comfortable yet. So let's try it again. I'm going to snap a little slower. Ready? A, C sharp A, E flat, D flat C, G flat, A flat, E flat, F flat, G flat, A flat. And if there's a specific part where you're getting held up, like the F flat, then think that. E flat, F flat, G flat, A flat. E flat, F flat, G flat, A flat. The next step then would be to say it while fingering the notes. And my favorite way of doing this, and I'm going to invite you all to do it with me really quick, put your head joint on your left shoulder. Aim your foot joint at your music so you can see the music and you can see your fingers. Okay? Let's start with a E flat, F flat, G flat, A flat. So say E flat and finger it. F flat, finger it. G flat, A flat. Do that again. E flat, F flat, G flat, A flat. Let's do that beat starting on the C. C, G flat, A flat, E flat, F flat, G flat, A flat. Doing that beat again. This is beats 7, 8, 9. C, G flat, A flat, E flat, F flat, G flat, A flat. And then say and finger the whole measure. A, C sharp A, E flat, D flat C, G flat, A flat, E flat, F flat, G flat, A flat, G, F sharp, E flat, D, etc. Right? So take the time to translate it. There aren't any shortcuts in learning music. I mean, if there's some things that some people are more comfortable with and others are less comfortable with. And rather than say like, I'm never going to get it, just take a time and say it. So now that you've said it a few times, Rachel, and you don't have to unmute yourself, but just play it right now, just that measure. And now unmute yourself and tell us, how is your confidence level of that measure compared to before?
Honestly, I find it easier when I come at it from the whole melody at 21 because it does kind of contextualize the accidentals, make more sense.
Yeah.
When
you do it in context, are you as accurate with the notes?
Getting there.
Getting there. So there's multiple ways that we can approach any kind of conflict or opportunity. But I think oftentimes addressing it directly where the thing needs to happen saves time. If we always try to start at the beginning of the phrase and then we stop at the same place, then we're never actually practicing what the problem is. So since you're unmuted, let's go ahead and hear it. Will you start at measure 24 with the B flats, and then we can just assess if there's anything that is actually happening. Note-wise, that was accurate. Rhythmically, it got a little bit back and forth, and there was some hesitation, like just point blank, like pausing and stopping.
Yeah.
So maybe a good thing to do would be to chunk those 3 measures, but slower, so that way you're practicing the rhythm that you want and the the feeling and the mood that you want. And then while you're accurate with the rhythm and the notes and all of the other elements, then begin to speed it up slowly and take it with you. But the general thought is, if you keep messing up one place, practice just that one little thing. It's so tempting for us to go back to the beginning and go over and over and over again and stop at the same place, rather than and then face the things head on. I know it feels better to go back a little further because then it feels like it's part of the melody and shape, but that is playing versus practicing. And it's nice to separate the two. So that way when you do play, you can have the enjoyment and the accuracy that will be translated for more enjoyment for the audience too. Great, Rachel. Thank you so much. Any other thoughts or questions from anybody out there?
I just wanted to add that when you've got the flute either on your shoulder or you're just putting breath through it and not making tone, you can listen for the rhythm of the key clicks and hear if your fingers are synchronized as you're making those changes. And that'll help you identify spots where, you know, your finger synchronicity isn't exactly right, and that's going to be slowing down your work through the passage.
Finger synchronicity that Sean mentioned is also the blips. So if you hear, like, when you meant to go, you can hear if there's that extra blip in there. And then if your fingers are lining up with where you think the pulse is. So that can kind of go two different ways. Thank you, Sean, for sharing that out. I also like to hear the pitch of the flute without me playing. You know, and then I start to audiate or imagine the sound in my ear. And then when I come to play, I know what it sounds like. Or even when I don't play, like now, the more I do it, then I look at music and I can hear it. So thanks, Sean, for talking about listening to the key clicks too when we do that air sound or the fingering practice. Any other thoughts to add in? All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate all of you so much, and I look forward to hearing more and more submissions on the Soul of the Month Facebook page. When you are looking for anything related to flute, please do check out Flute World. They are awesome friends of ours, with 3 locations in San Francisco, somewhere in Michigan near Detroit, and then Charlotte, North Carolina, but also a virtual presence too. So everyone have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next month on the second Saturday for another group practice. Check out your Zoom settings before class too, so we can have even more sharing.